Keiji was the youngest child in the wealthy Adeyemi family, owners of a famous fabric company in Ibadan. Her father, Chief Teo, and mother, Madam Saad, were respected businesspeople who believed success came only through sharp minds and quick results. But their daughter was different. Keiji learned slowly, mixed up letters, and often forgot her lessons. Teachers labeled her as weak, and her parents began to believe it too. Whenever she tried to help in the family business, her mother would sigh, saying she was too slow to understand numbers. Her siblings, Tund and Yajide, laughed at her every mistake, making her feel like she didn't belong in her own home. Still, Keiji had a gentle heart and big dreams. She loved watching how clothes were made, how colors mixed into beauty, and how customers smiled when they touched soft fabrics. She imagined creating something that could make people feel that same joy. But every time she spoke, her ideas were dismissed. Her father would remind her that she wasn't made for business, and her mother often compared her to her smarter siblings. Each insult cut deep, but Keiji stayed quiet, hiding her pain behind a shy smile. One evening, during a big family dinner, she tried to share a simple idea: selling their fabrics online to reach more people. Instead of listening, her father burst into laughter, and her mother told her to leave money matters to those who understood business. Her brother mocked her, saying she couldn't even count properly. The table filled with laughter, but in Keiji's chest something broke. She realized she would never be respected as long as she stayed under that roof. That night, she packed her few clothes into a small bag and left without a word. She didn't know what waited for her, but she was sure of one thing: she would prove them wrong. As the night bus rumbled toward Lagos, she stared out the window, tears mixing with determination. She wasn't running away from her family. She was running toward her own future. That moment marked the beginning of a journey that would change her life, and theirs forever. During a family dinner, while everyone sat around the long wooden table filled with rich food and loud laughter, Keiji quietly gathered her courage to speak. She looked at her father and softly said they could grow their business if they started an online store. For a moment, there was silence. Then, Chief Teo burst out laughing so hard the spoon in his hand shook. Her mother, Madam Saad, gave a disappointed sigh and said, "You can't even count properly. Leave business, talk to your smarter siblings." The words hit her like a slap. The air turned heavy, and all eyes turned to her. Her brother Tun smirked, leaning back in his chair saying, "Online store? You can't even balance a calculator." Her sister Yajide joined in, mocking her slow way of speaking and pretending to fumble with her fingers like Keiji often did while counting. The laughter around the table grew louder, echoing like cruel music in her ears. Even the house staff glanced awkwardly, unsure whether to laugh or look away. Keiji's heart sank, but she forced a small smile, pretending it didn't hurt. Inside, her chest felt tight, her eyes burned, and her throat ached from holding back tears. Her father continued eating as if nothing had happened, proud of the mockery, as though it was a lesson she needed. Her mother looked at her coldly and said, "You should focus on helping in the kitchen. Business isn't for everyone." Everyone went back to chatting, but to Keiji, the room felt empty. She could barely taste her food. Each word replayed in her mind. "You can't even count properly." That moment carved a deep wound in her heart, one she knew would never fade easily. She stayed quiet for the rest of the meal, hiding the storm building inside her. While others laughed and planned their next business meeting, she stared at her plate, her mind spinning with determination. She wasn't angry. She was hurt, but that pain was slowly turning into power. As her father raised a toast to family success, she made a silent promise to herself. One day, she would show them that even the one they called slow could rise higher than anyone ever imagined. Keiji decides to leave home after hearing the words that shattered her heart. Late one night, she passed by her parents' room and heard them talking about her. Her father's voice was cold when he said, "She'll only waste anything she touches." Her mother agreed softly, saying that Keiji would never bring success to the family. She froze at the door, every word sinking deep like a knife. For years, she had tried to please them, helping at the shop, learning, trying to fit in, but nothing was ever enough. That night, she realized no matter what she did, they would never see her worth. Tears rolled down her face as she stood alone in the dark hallway, her heart breaking silently. When the house went quiet, she walked to her small room and sat on the edge of her bed. The laughter from dinner still echoed in her head, mixed with her parents' harsh words. She looked around at the walls covered with her small dreams, old notes, fabric sketches, and pictures of clothes she wanted to design someday. She touched them gently, whispering to herself that she was done trying to prove anything inside a house that never believed in her. She opened her drawer, took out the little money she had saved from helping at the shop, and folded her few clothes into a small worn bag. Her hands trembled, but her mind was clear. She had to go. Before dawn, she stepped out quietly, her slippers barely making a sound on the tiled floor. The city was still asleep, but her heart was racing. She walked to the main road and waited for the bus heading to Lagos. The air was cold and she hugged herself, unsure of what awaited her, yet certain she couldn't stay any longer. When the old night bus finally arrived, she climbed aboard and sat by the window. As the bus pulled away, she looked back at the only home she'd ever known, not with regret, but with quiet strength. She didn't know how, but deep inside, she promised herself that one day, the same people who called her useless would speak her name with pride. In Lagos, she struggles, sleeping on the cold floor of her friend's tiny one-room apartment. The room was cramped, noisy, and hot, but to Morin Keiji it was freedom. She had no fancy bed, no comfort, no help, only her old phone and a dream she refused to let die. Every morning, she would wake up before dawn, go to the local market, and buy second-hand clothes with the little money she had. She would wash, iron, and take photos of them using her phone camera, then post them online, hoping someone would buy. Some days she sold nothing. Some days, she skipped meals just to save money for data. Lagos was tough, but she was tougher. When people ignored her messages or mocked her prices, she didn't give up. Instead, she watched free tutorials on her old phone late into the night, learning how to advertise, how to build trust with customers, and how to make her small page look professional. She taught herself everything the internet could offer: digital marketing, e-commerce, and customer care. Her fingers often hurt from typing so much, but she didn't stop. She wanted to prove that even the girl everyone called slow could build something big with her own hands. Her friend, who shared the small space, would often worry and tell her to rest, but Morin Keiji just smiled and said, "One day, this will make sense." Slowly, her hard work began to pay off. People started to notice her honesty, her quick replies, and her beautiful thrift collections. She treated every buyer like royalty, always adding a thank you note with each order. Her page began to grow one follower at a time. Even when power outages left her sweating in the dark, she used the time to plan her next post. She dreamed of a day when her name would mean something, when people would wear her clothes with pride. Lagos tested her every single day, but each challenge built her strength. She was no longer the shy girl from Ibadan. She was a fighter learning to stand on her own, determined to turn struggle into success. Her thrift store, More Styles, suddenly takes off after a local influencer promotes it. It happens so unexpectedly that Morin Keiji could hardly believe it. One morning, she woke up to find hundreds of messages on her phone. People were asking for prices, sizes, and delivery details. The influencer had posted a picture wearing one of her thrift dresses with a caption praising the quality. Within hours, her small online shop exploded with attention. The girl who used to beg for one sale was now struggling to reply to everyone fast enough. Her heart raced as she packed order after order, thanking each buyer like they were her first. She barely slept for days, working with excitement and gratitude. The same old phone that once felt too slow now became her tool of success. Every corner of her friend's apartment was filled with packages and clothes ready for delivery. She smiled through the exhaustion, realizing this was what she had prayed for. Soon, she had too many orders to handle alone, so she hired 2 young girls from the neighborhood to help her pack and deliver. They worked together, laughing, sweating, and cheering whenever new notifications came in. For the first time, Morin Keiji felt proud, not because of what others thought of her, but because she had built something that was hers. Instead of wasting her new earnings, she began saving carefully. Every naira was counted, every expense noted. She learned how to manage her money, how to restock, and how to keep her customers happy. Her little business grew into a trusted name. People loved how she replied kindly and always delivered what she promised. She didn't brag or show off. She just kept working silently, letting her results speak. Each night before sleeping, she would whisper a prayer of thanks, remembering the day she left home with nothing but faith. Styles became more than just a thrift store. It became her symbol of hope and strength. And though her success was growing fast, she still felt something deep inside. The quiet desire to one day stand before her family, not for revenge, but to show them that the girl they once laughed at had turned her pain into purpose. Without realizing it, her best-selling fabrics are sourced from Adeyemi Textiles, her family's business. Morinkeji discovered this one hot afternoon while restocking from a major supplier. As she unpacked the new shipment, she noticed a familiar logo printed faintly on one of the rolls. Her heart skipped a beat. She looked closer, and there it was, the Adeyemi Textiles emblem, the same one that once hung proudly on the factory walls of her family's company back in Ibadan. For a long moment, she just stared at it, her hands trembling slightly. The same people who called her useless were unknowingly helping her business grow. The irony made her smile, but it wasn't out of joy. It was a quiet, knowing smile filled with mixed emotions. She sat down and laughed softly to herself, thinking about how life had come full circle. The fabrics that once belonged to her father's empire were now the reason her brand was thriving. Instead of anger, she felt calm. She didn't rush to announce her discovery or confront anyone. She knew this was bigger than revenge. This was destiny giving her a second chance to rise on her own terms. From that day, she began to plan more carefully. She built stronger connections with suppliers, improved her packaging, and made sure her name, not her family's, shone in every delivery. Whenever she held those fabrics, she didn't feel bitterness. She felt power. She had turned what they thought was her weakness into her greatest strength. Her customers loved the texture, the patterns, the quality, the very things her family once thought she'd never understand. Sometimes she imagined her father still believing she couldn't count, while somewhere in his factory, workers were unknowingly producing the very material that carried her brand to success. Instead of cutting ties with the supplier, she decided to keep buying from them quietly. She wanted to grow even stronger before revealing the truth. She promised herself that when the right moment came, she would stand before her parents not as the broken girl they once mocked, but as the woman who built her empire with the very fabrics they created. And that thought alone made her smile again, this time with purpose. Back home, Chief Tayo's business begins to crumble. What was once the pride of Ibadan slowly turned into a heavy burden. The customers who used to flood their showroom were now shopping online from newer, faster brands. Orders dropped, payments delayed, and warehouses that were once full of life now stood silent. Chief Tayo blamed everyone except himself. He refused to believe the world had changed and still trusted the old ways of running business. Meanwhile, his competitors were growing stronger, offering cheaper and better options. Adeyemi Textiles, once a name everyone respected, was now losing its shine day by day. Madame Saad tried to hide the panic, pretending everything was fine when visitors came, but deep down, she was scared. The bills kept piling up, suppliers demanded payment, and the bank began sending warning letters. Their son Tund made poor financial decisions, investing carelessly and worsening the situation. Their daughter Yajide, who once mocked Morinkeji, focused only on her social life, posting pictures online while the family business fell apart. The tension in the house grew heavier every day, and arguments filled the air where laughter once lived. Then came the final blow. A major loan they had taken years ago reached its deadline, and the bank refused to give them more time. Chief Tayo sat in his office, surrounded by unpaid invoices, feeling his world collapse. For the first time, he realized how fragile everything had become. The workers began leaving one after another, seeking jobs elsewhere. Machines that once hummed loudly were now silent, covered in dust. The family that once bragged about success could no longer afford luxury dinners or trips. At night, Madame Saad wept quietly, wondering how they had fallen so far. They never imagined that the same business they built with pride would one day be at risk of being taken away. But fate had its plan. While they struggled to hold on, somewhere in Lagos, the daughter they had called the Slow One was building an empire strong enough to buy everything they were about to lose. And soon, they would learn that the very person they had looked down on would be the one holding their future in her hands. Morinkeji's company grows powerful. Investors approach her from different parts of the country, impressed by her success story. What began as a small thrift page had now become a respected fashion brand known for quality and honesty. She had built a loyal team, opened a small office, and was planning her first big fashion line. People admired how she treated everyone with kindness, yet handled business with wisdom far beyond her years. Each month brought new opportunities, partnerships, sponsorships, and clients from across Nigeria. Her name, Moore Styles, was now spoken with respect. She worked quietly, never showing off, but her success spoke loudly for her. One afternoon, while attending a business event in Lagos, she overheard two investors discussing a major textile company that was about to be auctioned due to debt. When she heard the name Adeyemi Textiles, her heart skipped. It was her family's business, the same one that once rejected her ideas and mocked her dreams. For a long moment, she said nothing. She simply smiled, realizing destiny was opening a door she never planned to knock on. She went home that night and sat at her desk, thinking carefully. Buying the company wasn't about revenge, it was about closure. She wanted to build something stronger from the ruins of what once broke her spirit. Quietly, without telling anyone, she contacted the bank and began the process. Using her company's name, she submitted the bid with all the documents ready. Days later, the official call came. Her offer had been accepted. Adeyemi Textiles now belonged to Moore Group, the brand she had built with her own sweat and tears. When she signed the papers, she didn't feel triumph, she felt peace. She thought of her younger self, the girl who had left home with nothing but a small bag and a wounded heart. Now, she owned the very empire that once shut her out. She didn't rush to announce it or celebrate publicly. Instead, she quietly prepared for the next chapter. Deep inside, she knew the day would soon come when her parents would call the new owner for negotiation. And when that happened, she would finally walk into that room not as the broken daughter they mocked, but as the woman who rebuilt everything they lost. Her parents summoned the new owner for negotiation, hoping to convince them to delay the takeover. They sat nervously in the big boardroom, the same room where Moore Keji once stood quietly as a child, watching decisions being made without her. Chief Tayo adjusted his tie again and again, while Madame Saad whispered prayers under her breath. They had no idea who the new owner was, only that this person now controlled everything they had built. They waited anxiously until the door opened. The sound of confident footsteps echoed through the room, and when Moore Keji walked in wearing a sharp power suit, both of them froze in shock. For a long moment no one spoke. Her father's mouth fell open, and her mother's eyes filled with disbelief. The same daughter they had called the slow one now looked like a woman born to lead. Her posture was calm, her expression unreadable. She placed a file on the table, slid it toward them and said softly, "These are the ownership papers. Moore Group now fully owns Adeyemi Textiles." Her father tried to speak, but words failed him. Her mother's hands shook as she whispered, You bought it?" Moore Keji nodded slowly and replied, "You said I was too dumb to handle money. Yet here I am, signing your payroll." The silence in the room was heavy. Chief Tayo leaned back, guilt flooding his face as memories of all the times he had mocked her flashed before his eyes. Madame Saad covered her face, crying quietly. The proud parents who once boasted of perfection were now sitting before the daughter they had rejected, realizing she had saved what they lost. But Moore Keji didn't come to humiliate them. She looked at them with grace and said, "This isn't revenge. It's just proof that every seed you throw away can still grow, if it finds the right ground." Her voice was calm but powerful, each word carrying the weight of her journey. Her parents finally understood the pain she had hidden for years. Tears filled her mother's eyes as she reached for her daughter's hand. For the first time, Chief Tayo lowered his head and whispered, "Forgive us, my daughter." And in that moment Moore Keji smiled, not out of pride but peace. Her mother breaks down in tears, her body shaking as she tries to speak. Years of pride and regret crash down all at once. Her father, once a man full of confidence and control, now sits quietly, his eyes heavy with shame. He looks at his daughter, the same girl he once called slow, the same girl he never believed in, and says softly, "Forgive us, my daughter." His voice trembles as he admits that they were wrong, that they failed to see her heart, her strength, her brilliance. The silence in the room feels sacred, filled with emotions no one can hide. Moore Keji walks closer and gently places her hand on her mother's shoulder. "I forgive you," she says calmly, her eyes kind but firm. "But let this be a lesson. Never measure someone's worth by how fast they learn. Measure it by how hard they rise. Her words sink deep into their hearts. Her father nods slowly, unable to hold back his tears. In that moment, all the walls between them fall apart. The proud family that once looked down on her now looks up to her with admiration and respect. In the following days, Morin Keiji takes charge of the old factory. She doesn't close it, she rebuilds it. Workers return, the machines start again, and a new name shines on the building, Mora Group. The same walls that once heard insults now echo with motivation and hope. Under her leadership, the company becomes a symbol of strength, resilience, and self-belief. People all over the city talk about the young woman who turned pain into power and rejection into success. Her parents now visit often, helping in any way they can. Her mother greets her with hugs instead of harsh words, and her father proudly introduces her as his greatest achievement. Morin Keiji's story spreads far beyond Ibadan, inspiring young people everywhere to believe that slow does not mean weak, and failure does not mean the end. The same girl once called the slow one became the voice of courage for a generation. Hi, besties 2 hearts, thank you so much for watching to the end. Sparkling heart, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. See you in the next one. Waving hand sparkles.